First story. My entitled boyfriend was grieving his mother's death, so I abused him and forced him to a party. He refused to engage, so I humiliated him in front of my friends, called him a chihuahua and small DCK energy, and then demanded he apologize to all my friends and move on from his mother because he got a girl like me. He refused, so I cheated on him in rage. Now he refuses to take accountability for my cheating. I 28F have been with my boyfriend Mark 33M for just over 3 years. It's easily the most stable and supportive relationship I've ever had. He's grounded, incredibly patient, and not just nice in a performative way, he's kind in that deep, quiet way that makes you feel safe. My friends and family love him. Honestly, so do I. But lately I've been sitting with this overwhelming, raw disappointment over what happened on New Year's Eve, and I can't get it out of my head. To give some background, Mark lost his mother 3 years ago on the evening of December 24th. It wasn't sudden, she had been sick, but it still broke him in ways I don't think even he fully realizes. Since then, the 24th has been more than just the day before Christmas to him. It's the day everything shifted. He usually spends it with his grandmother, with no big plans, just remembrance. He's never asked for much around it. He doesn't make a dramatic show of grief, but I know it hits hard every year. This year, my family decided to do Christmas in the UK instead of Germany, where we live. My parents are originally English, so it was going to be a full extended family thing, which sounded chaotic but meaningful. I asked Mark if he wanted to come. I also gave him the option very clearly of flying on the 25th instead of the 24th. I knew the date was sensitive. I offered to shift our travel plans even though the tickets were more expensive. He told me it was fine to leave on the 24th. His words were, "It's okay, I want to be with you. It's just a date." So I took him at his word. We flew on the 24th. The first few days of the trip were tense. The energy was off from the start. We spent the first evening with one of my dad's closest friends, whose wife had just passed away a month earlier. He was still grieving. There was this heaviness in the air. People were quiet. Conversations felt like they could collapse at any moment. My siblings were bickering. My parents were short-tempered. Old family tensions that we usually managed to avoid during short visits just spilt out, day after day. Mark, for the most part, just stayed quiet, calm, supportive, almost too much. I checked in on him multiple times, and he just said things like, "Yeah, I'm okay," or "It's a lot, but I'm all right." He never raised a complaint, never looked pissed, just tired. I thought it was the travel or the general vibe of the house. I didn't push. Our original plan was to spend 2 days with family, then have some time just the two of us. That didn't happen. Every day some relative wanted to see me. Every day was booked. My parents changed the schedule last minute, so Mark and I barely had any time alone at all. There was one afternoon where I suggested we just go for a long walk or have dinner out, and my dad guilt-tripped me into attending another family lunch. I caved. Mark didn't say anything, just nodded and followed. We had one particularly bad night where my mom and my sister started yelling at each other over something dumb, and I snapped at both of them. Mark was in the kitchen making tea for everyone while it happened, just completely silent. I even remember joking to him later, "How do you stay so calm through all of this?" And he just gave me this weird half smile and said, "I'm used to being around people falling apart." That sentence keeps playing in my head now. I didn't think much of it at the time, but maybe I should have. We got back to Germany on the morning of the 31st, absolutely exhausted. We slept most of the day. Then that evening we met up with some of my friends low-key at first. We went to one bar for drinks, and then later on we were invited to a party where the music was loud hardcore metal. Not usually Mark's thing. He's more into old-school jazz and ambient, and that sort of mellow stuff. I've always known this, but he's never made a big deal out of it. I asked if he was okay with going, and he said, "Sure." Even when we got there, I checked in a few times, and he gave me the same answer. "I'm fine." Not overly enthusiastic, but not miserable either. Just quiet. A bit off, maybe? Not smiling much, but still holding my hand, still present. Around 3:30 a.m. A group of friends invited us to another small venue nearby that was hosting a similar party. I asked Mark if he wanted to go. He said, "If you're going, I'll come." So we went. That's when things finally broke. The place was tiny, dark, loud, and filled with people moshing and headbanging. I was actually having fun. It felt good to unwind after the chaos of the last few days. But Mark looked increasingly stiff. Not angry, just withdrawn. At around 4 a.m., he leant in and said, I think I'm going to head home. His voice was tight, like he didn't want to talk. I didn't expect that. I told him, come on, stay just another 20 minutes. Try to make an effort. And that's when he snapped. He didn't yell. But the way he spoke cold, sharp, cut right through the noise. I spent the 24th and 25th with your arguing family. I've done enough effort. It stopped me in my tracks. It wasn't even the words, it was the tone. That wasn't Mark's voice. Not the Mark I knew. Not the one who always swallowed everything to keep the peace. I just stood there, frozen. Then he walked away. And right before he left, in front of my friends who were all now watching, dead silent, he kissed me on the cheek like we were strangers saying goodbye at a dinner party. I didn't know what to do. I felt like I'd been slapped. I stood there with tears in my eyes, trying to laugh it off. One of my friends asked if I was okay, and I just said, yeah, I guess he was tired. But I knew even then that wasn't the truth. I got home about an hour later and texted him that I didn't appreciate him arguing with me in public. That he ruined my birthday, yes, I was born on New Year's, and that I expected him to apologize to my friends for making a scene and walking out like that. He didn't respond that night. The next morning, I got a short message. I don't have anything to say right now. That was it. I waited hours before I replied and said, well, when you do, I'd appreciate if you acknowledged how your behavior affected me and everyone else who witnessed it. He never responded to that. Instead, he came over the following evening. He didn't look angry, just cold. Like the version of him I'd never seen before. I asked him, do you understand how that felt? Being left in the middle of my birthday party like that, in front of everyone. He said, I understand that you were embarrassed. I also understand that I told you I was at my limit, and you ignored it. I told him I didn't ignore it. I asked multiple times throughout the night if he was okay. He always said yes. He never once said, I'm at my limit, until he snapped. He didn't budge. I told him he owed an apology to my friends. Saying something like that in front of people, then walking off, giving me a kiss like we were acquaintances, it wasn't respectful. He could have pulled me aside. He could have asked me to come with him. He didn't. He said he wasn't going to apologize for having feelings or for finally saying what he was thinking. That hit me hard. Because it reframed everything like I had made him bottle things up, and now I was punishing him for letting them out. But that's not how I saw it. I wasn't upset about his feelings. I was upset about how he chose to express them. Blowing up at me after days of saying nothing. Doing it in public. Leaving without giving me the chance to even respond. I told him, you acted like I forced you to come on this trip. You agreed to everything. I asked if you were okay leaving on the 24th. You said yes. I asked if you were okay at the party. You said yes. He said, I didn't think it would hit me this hard. I thought I could handle it. But no one asked how I felt once we got there. It was just constant chaos. No one asked if I needed a break. I reminded him that I asked if he wanted to go out alone. I suggested taking a walk, getting away from the family. He was the one who always said, it's fine. I was managing family schedules, last-minute changes, hosting, translating, juggling everything. And he was the one who gave me nothing to work with until it was too late. Then he said, I didn't want to make your Christmas about my grief. So which is it? He didn't speak up because he was being considerate. Or he didn't speak up because he thought I didn't care. When I asked again, so you're not going to apologize to my friends, he said, no. I'm not going to perform guilt because your night didn't go how you wanted. He left right after. Since then, we've barely spoken. My friends keep asking if we're okay. My best friend told me, I get why he was overwhelmed, but it was your birthday. It's not nothing. My brother, who was also at the party, said, he looked like he hated every second. You probably should have pulled him out earlier. My parents think he overreacted. They said if he didn't want to be there on the 24th, he should have stayed in Germany. I keep thinking back to that trip. The silence. The moments where he checked out. The way he smiled politely through family drama. How he made tea during the loudest fight in the kitchen. He didn't say he was breaking down, but now I think he was. At the same time, I keep returning to that moment on New Year's Eve. I needed a partner in that moment, not someone who'd emotionally tap out and leave me holding the bag. I still feel blindsided. And I don't know if asking him to apologize was wrong. Maybe I should have just let it go. Maybe asking for an apology was me trying to force control after I lost it. Maybe I was embarrassed and lashed out. But I also think that how people communicate matters. I've been grieving family members while also managing parties, work, family, and life. I've never lashed out like that at him. I don't expect perfection. I expect basic respect, and I didn't feel respected that night. So here I am, days later, feeling like we're two different people who no longer understand each other. Ada for telling him he ruined my New Year's Eve, and for asking him to apologize to my friends. I truly care about him. I know grief doesn't have a fixed timeline. But I also believe people need to be responsible for how they treat others, especially the people who care the most. So, am I the arsehole? Comments. Comment 1. You're emotionally tone deaf here, OP. You say you care about Mark's feelings, but literally everything in your post screams the opposite. You knew the 24th was the day his mum died. You offered to change the flight, but when he said, "It's fine," you ran with it and stopped checking in emotionally. "It's fine" isn't always a green light, especially from someone grieving. He bottled up for days around your combative family and got dragged to parties he clearly wasn't into. And instead of getting even one quiet evening to grieve, you called him a party pooper and told him to make an effort. That's cold. You say you kept checking in, but you were asking him if he was okay with your plans, not actually sitting down and saying, "How are you doing? This week must be brutal." You didn't make space. You just asked for compliance. Then when he finally hits a wall, you humiliate him by demanding an apology for making you look bad. The whole post is about how you felt embarrassed, sad, abandoned. But where's the part where you acknowledge how emotionally brutal the entire trip probably was for him? Yeah, he kissed you on the cheek and dipped. And yeah, it probably hurt. But if my partner told me to suck it up and make an effort at 4 a.m. in a hardcore metal venue after all that, I'd leave too. YTA. Apologize to him. Not the other way around. Comment 2. This wasn't a vacation for Mark. It was a week-long emotional marathon where he was expected to show up, shut up, and smile through every single one of your social and family obligations. It started with grief his and your dad's friends, was followed by arguments and family tension, and ended with him being dragged around loud parties where he knew no one and didn't even like the music. You admit you told him he could leave any time, but that was clearly conditional. You only meant it as long as he didn't actually take you up on it. Telling someone, make an effort, at 4 a.m. after a week like that. That's not just tone deaf, it's borderline cruel. What really rubs me wrong is how much this post centers your embarrassment and disappointment, but not his entire emotional reality. He gave you everything: time, patience, presence, and when he finally ran dry, you demanded he apologize. He kissed you on the cheek before leaving. That wasn't pettiness. That was him preserving dignity, yours and his. YTA. Hugely. You're not ready to be someone's partner if you expect them to endure your life, but can't hold space for theirs. Comment 3. I don't think this is as simple as you're the or he is. This whole thing is a slow-motion train wreck of mutual miscommunication and unexpressed resentment. Mark didn't want to be a burden, so he minimized his grief. He probably didn't feel like he could ask for space in the middle of your family circus. But what he doesn't realize is when you suppress your needs to keep the peace, resentment builds. That always explodes later, and it often looks out of nowhere to the other person, which is what happened here. On your end, I don't think you're evil or heartless. I think you were genuinely overwhelmed with your family's chaos, trying to balance hosting, schedules, and expectations. You saw Mark as your emotional rock and lent on that. You weren't trying to dismiss him, but you didn't notice the cracks in the dam. That said, yeah, telling someone to make an effort at 4 a.m. in a venue they hate, after a grief-heavy week, was a SHTTY moment. You missed the signal, and he blew up. I don't think demanding he apologize is helpful. It sounds like you want validation that you were hurt, which is fair. But it's coming off like you're punishing him for finally expressing his limits. I'd seriously recommend taking a step back, dropping the apology request, and instead having a grown-up conversation about why he reached a breaking point, and what both of you need to avoid this kind of silent pressure cooker dynamic in the future. No. Just two people trying to hold it together and failing in very human ways. Update. I didn't expect the original post to blow up, but I read every comment. I don't agree with most of them, but I did take one thing seriously. People kept saying Mark, and I needed to actually talk, not circle around it. So I did exactly that. I just didn't do it quietly or privately, because frankly, I was done being the only one emotionally exposed while he got to hide behind silence and grief. A few days after my post, Mark still hadn't apologized, hadn't reached out properly, and was barely responding to texts. Short, flat answers. No accountability. Meanwhile, I was replaying everything. The trip, the family tension, the parties, the way he walked out. the way I was left to deal with the fallout. I kept thinking about how often this happens, him checking out, going quiet, forcing me to guess what's wrong, then exploding when he's had enough. I also couldn't shake something else. One of my friends sent me a screenshot of Mark's Instagram story. He never posts, ever. But there it was, a black and white quote about choosing boundaries over people who drain you. No names, obviously, but the timing wasn't subtle. To me, it felt pointed. Like he was painting himself as the wounded party, while I was being dragged in comments online and in real life. That's when I decided I wasn't going to let him control the narrative anymore. I arranged a group video call with my closest friends. Not random people, these are the people who've been part of my life for years, who saw me crying on my birthday, who had to awkwardly process him storming out. I told Mark I wanted to talk, and that my friends would be on the call too. He hesitated, but I insisted. I told him I needed support and witnesses, because every time we talk privately, he twists things into me being too emotional or not understanding his grief. He showed up. Visibly uncomfortable, sitting stiffly in front of the camera, clearly not thrilled that there were 8 other faces on the screen. I started calmly. I laid out, point by point, what hurt me, not just New Year's Eve, but the entire stretch around it. How the family trip turned into constant tension. How I felt like I was carrying everyone emotionally while he went silent. How humiliating it was to be left at a party on my birthday. How the cheek kiss felt dismissive and cold. Then I addressed the elephant in the room, his mother. I said that I respected his loss, that I knew grief doesn't disappear, but that it's been years. That when you choose to be in a relationship, especially with someone like me, who is social, close to family, and active with friends, you don't get to freeze time around your trauma forever. I told him he can't expect the world to shrink around his grief indefinitely. That I'm not asking him to forget his mother, but I am asking him to move forward instead of using her death as a shield every time he shuts down or lashes out. That's when his face changed. He interrupted me and said I had no right to talk about his mother. That this wasn't something my friends needed to hear. I told him they were already involved, they were there that night. They saw the aftermath, and they matter to me. If he wants to be with me, he has to understand my people. My life isn't just me and him in a vacuum. I told him this call was also an opportunity. Everyone important to me was here. This was his chance to apologize once and move forward without dragging this out. Simple. Efficient. Clean. He refused. He said I was delusional. That he never humiliated me. That he always treated me with respect. And that what I was doing right now, putting him on display, forcing him to justify his pain in front of others, was the most humiliating thing he's ever experienced. He said he'd held it together long enough, and that I don't get to decide when his grief expires. That's when I lost my patience. I told him I wasn't attacking him. I was doing what was good for our relationship. That he clearly doesn't understand me, my world, my emotions, or how much effort it takes to exist in my life. I told him he doesn't get to opt out of accountability just because he's hurting. Plenty of people hurt and still show up properly. He tried to speak again, and I cut him off. I told him to stop with the small DCK energy, stop shouting, and stop acting like a chihuahua snapping at everyone when cornered. Yes, I used those words. That's how I talk when I'm angry. It's not abuse, it's blunt. Anyone who knows me knows that's my language. He stared at the screen, said, "This is unreal," and hung up the call. The silence afterwards was brutal. A few of my friends immediately messaged me, saying they thought I'd been clear and strong. One even said it was about time someone told him to stop hiding behind grief. But not everyone agreed. One friend in particular, someone whose opinion I've always respected, told me that she thought I crossed a line bringing up his mother like that and doing it in front of everyone. She said she felt uncomfortable and didn't want to be involved in our relationship anymore if that's how conflicts were handled. I told her I disagreed, and that if she couldn't support me, then maybe she didn't belong in my inner circle. We're no longer speaking. After the call, Mark came to my place to get some things. The argument picked up again in person. He said what I did proved he was right to walk away that night. That I care more about optics and validation than about him. I told him that if he can't handle being part of my life, all of it, then maybe he shouldn't be in it at all. I told him he'd be spending next Christmas alone. That I wasn't going to tiptoe around dates and moods anymore. That I refused to build a future where every holiday is hostage to his past. He didn't argue. He said he needed space. Since then, he hasn't responded to messages. I later found out through a mutual acquaintance that he booked a solo trip for later this month. Again, no discussion, no consideration, just withdrawal. To me, it feels like punishment. like he's trying to make a point by disappearing. Is it really that unreasonable to want your partner to understand your world? To ask them to acknowledge the people who matter to you? To expect them to take responsibility when they hurt you? I didn't even say the worst things I could have said. Calling him a chihuahua wasn't meant to destroy him. It was frustration, not cruelty. Anyone who knows me knows I could have been far harsher. He still hasn't apologized. He still hasn't acknowledged how that night affected me. And now he's stonewalling entirely. So I'm asking again, after everything that's happened, is it really such a big deal to confront your boyfriend about his behavior and ask him to fix what he broke? Or am I expected to keep shrinking myself, my emotions, and my life to accommodate someone who refuses to meet me where I am? I genuinely don't know anymore. Comments. Comment 1. I'm going to be blunt here. What you did wasn't a conversation, it was a public ambush. You set up a video call with all your friends acting as witnesses, and that wasn't about communication at all. That was performance. You weren't trying to understand him. You were trying to shame him, corner him, and force him to back down. Mark may have shut down at times, but what I'm hearing is that you require constant emotional visibility from him on your terms when surrounded by your people. That's not realistic, especially for someone dealing with grief. He was trying to function in your world. And yeah, maybe he bottled up too long, but dragging him in front of your entire social circle to talk about his dead mom. That's not you being direct. That's you refusing to sit in discomfort unless it's on stage. He didn't disrespect you. He reached a breaking point. You escalated it into a group humiliation under the guise of clarity. You didn't give him space, you gave him an audience. YTA. Comment 2. Holy hell. So let me get this straight. Your boyfriend gives up the anniversary of his mother's death to support you, sits through your family's drama circus, gets pulled to 2 metal parties he hates, gets guilted when he finally says he's done, and then you demand he apologize while you cuss him out on camera in front of your hype squad. And now you're sitting here like, why won't he talk to me, girl? Because you treated his grief like a scheduling inconvenience and his trauma like a mood killer. You dragged his pain into a social tribunal and acted shocked when he opted the hell out. Calling him a chihuahua with small DCK energy, and then acting like that's just your love language? No, that's you weaponizing humiliation when you don't get your way. And don't tell me it's cute. He doesn't need therapy. You do. YTA. Comment 3. I don't think you're ready for a relationship. You're immature and emotionally reckless and deeply unaware of how you come off. You think you're being transparent and direct, but what you're actually doing is broadcasting deeply personal pain to control the narrative. You made Mark's grief, his mother's death, into a relationship KPI you're now grading him on. The reality is, he was probably operating at 20% capacity all week and still showed up. It wasn't enough for you. You wanted the whole smile for the party boyfriend package. And when he didn't deliver, you turned it into a performance review in front of a jury. He should have spoken up sooner, yes. But you also didn't create a space where he could. Everything seems to revolve around your emotions, your birthday, your friends, and your pacing. You're loud. And I don't mean that insultingly, I mean you dominate emotionally. That doesn't pair well with someone who grieves inwardly. I think he left because you stopped being someone he could be vulnerable around. Not because he's broken, but because you made it clear you expect grief to be on your timeline. YTA. You lost a good man because you wanted control more than connection. Update. I didn't plan to update again, but enough has happened that I want to close this chapter properly. This will likely be my last post. I'm not interested in defending myself anymore, and I'm not interested in continuing a public autopsy of a relationship that, despite everything, was good for a long time. After the video call, things didn't cool down. They escalated quietly, which somehow made it worse. 2 days after that call, Mark blocked me. Everywhere. I found out because one of my messages turned green instead of blue, and his profile picture disappeared. I won't lie, that hit harder than I expected. Blocking someone you've lived with, planned holidays with, talked about the future with. That's not healthy boundaries to me. That's avoidance. It felt like erasing me instead of dealing with me. The next thing I received was not from him, but from a mutual friend. Mark had asked him to come by and collect the rest of his things. I handed everything over without a scene, but it felt incredibly cowardly. If you can block someone you loved and outsource the breakup cleanup, that says a lot. That same evening, I got a voice message from Mark. One message, 6 minutes long, calm, controlled, very carefully worded. He said he felt unsafe communicating with me, that he needed distance, and that what happened on the call crossed a line he couldn't come back from. He repeated that I had no right to speak about his mother, that involving my friends was humiliating, and that he was done trying to explain himself. I listened to it twice. What stood out wasn't what he said, it was what he didn't. There was no acknowledgement of how that night affected me. No apology. No recognition that leaving me on my birthday hurt. Just boundaries, distance, and finality. It sounded rehearsed, like something he'd practiced to sound reasonable. I didn't respond. There was nothing to respond to. At that point, I decided I wasn't going to sit alone spiraling while he disappeared into silence. I went out with a friend a few nights later. Not to rebound, not to prove anything, just to feel normal again. We drank, talked, and laughed. I ended up hooking up with someone. And yes, it was bad. Awkward, rushed, disconnected. I left feeling worse than before. And I'm saying this clearly. That bad hookup was a direct result of Mark blowing up my emotional stability and then vanishing. I wasn't reckless for fun. I was trying to ground myself after being shut out without closure. If he hadn't blocked me, if he'd handled things like an adult instead of disappearing, I wouldn't have been in that headspace. After that, my family fully rallied around me. My parents told me they always felt like Mark was too fragile for me, too inward, and too easily overwhelmed. My brother said what happened on New Year's confirmed his impression that Mark avoids conflict until he explodes. Hearing that validated what I've been feeling all along, that I was carrying far more emotional weight in this relationship than I realized. Some friends supported me too. Others didn't. I've also read the comments here. Most of you hate me. I get that. You've decided I'm narcissistic, cruel, abusive, delusional, whatever label fits your narrative. Very few of you tried to understand how my mind works, how overwhelming it is to constantly be the expressive one in a relationship with someone who retreats and then resents you for not reading their silence correctly. This was a good relationship. I was supportive, loyal, and present. Mark benefited from being with me, my energy, my social world, and my openness. It's unfortunate he couldn't handle the full reality of that long term. I hope he finds someone quieter, someone who won't expect him to engage, someone who will tiptoe forever around his grief. I hope his future girlfriend listens to the story about his mother early on and realizes what she's signing up for. Not because grief is bad, but because if you don't process it, it leaks into everything. Maybe she'll leave sooner than I did. Maybe that will finally force him to confront it instead of hiding behind it. As for me, I'm going to be sad. I know that. I'll probably cry for a month or two. I'll miss the good parts. I'll miss who he was when things were easy. But I'll move on, because I have to. I always do. I'm done waiting for apologies that aren't coming. I'm done trying to explain myself to people who have already decided I'm the arsey hole. And I'm done shrinking my emotions to make someone else comfortable. Thank you to the few people who actually saw nuance here and didn't immediately jump to tearing me apart. I'm logging off after this. I want to heal, and I don't think continuing to update will help with that. This chapter is closed. Comments. Comment 1. What's striking isn't that this relationship ended, it's how consistently you rewrite events so that every outcome becomes someone else's fault. Mark blocking you wasn't avoidance. It was self-protection after you crossed a line that most people would never come back from. You didn't just argue, you organized a group confrontation about his grief, and then insulted him when he didn't perform remorse on cue. You say the hookup was because of him. You say the breakup logistics were cowardly. You say people distancing themselves are judgmental. At no point do you allow for the possibility that your actions made people uncomfortable for valid reasons. Mark didn't vanish. He exited a situation that became emotionally unsafe. You're allowed to be loud, expressive, and social, but other people are allowed to decide they don't want to live inside that storm. Comment 2. I think you're fundamentally incompatible, and it took a crisis to expose it. You operate externally, processing emotions through people, discussion, and intensity. Mark processes internally. Neither is wrong, but forcing one into the other is destructive. Where you went off the rails was deciding that your way was the correct way, and that resistance meant dysfunction. Grief doesn't resolve on a schedule, and it definitely doesn't resolve under public scrutiny. When you made his inner life a topic for group evaluation, you ended the relationship whether you realized it or not. That said, I don't think you're evil for wanting more engagement or more emotional presence. You just chose the worst possible method to demand it. He chose withdrawal. Both are understandable. Together, they were combustible. Walking away is probably the healthiest thing either of you has done so far. Just, maybe don't confuse being done with being right. Comment 3. You act like grief is an inconvenience Mark forced on you. Like his mother dying was this thing he should have moved past for your comfort. You keep talking about how hard you had it your birthday, your friends, your emotions, but you never stop to consider what this time of year might actually feel like for him. Not once. The way you keep saying he benefited from dating you makes it sound like you were doing him a favor. Like you were his emotional charity worker. He left because you made his pain a public performance. Because you used your friends as an emotional jury and wanted a verdict, not a conversation. Because you treated his silence as defiance instead of damage. You didn't just lose a boyfriend, you burned down something real, because it didn't look the way you wanted in front of your friends. And the worst part, you still think you were right. Second story. A coworker decided I look good in short and chopped it off without my permission, and now says he is on the spectrum and couldn't control himself. I'm suing him. I work remotely, and thus I can do whatever I like with my clothes and hair. I love it even though I'm a bit new to it. We have an office in my city that we have events at, and some non-remote workers work there. My coworker, Terry, works remotely, and we meet every Thursday morning to interface for projects that cross over our departments. Since I've met him, he always has comments on my hair and clothes, but it's whatever. But he does often say that my big curly hair would look a lot better short and showed me a photo of his wife, who has hair like mine but wears it really short. I just don't like my hair short, sue me. So I just go, not for me, I'm afraid. We have a holiday party that is next week, so I volunteered to help set it up not because I'm some great nice person. Mind you, I get paid extra and get extra vacation days. And the Caribbean is calling me lol. And Terry too is helping. He had some scissors and showed us with aluminum foil how cutting it can make scissors sharper. He kept saying, "It cuts so smooth," and kept going, cutting crap, and then grabbed some of my hair and cut it. It was me, him, and his teammate, and it quickly escalated. HR, of course, was notified. He says he didn't mean to but just got wrapped up in it and let his intrusive thoughts win. He says he's on the spectrum, and he's incredibly sorry. A coworker told me he is saying I must hate him, and he's been depressed since. HR is pulling me into a meeting tomorrow, and per our policy, they explicitly say what the meeting is about, what are my thoughts about it, and how would I like to move forward. I know I don't want to see this guy if I can help it, and I do want the cost covered for my stylist appointment. I don't really want police involved. My hair goes past my butt, and he cut right at my hip, so it was a good chunk. I'm angry, and I usually want to believe the best in people, but I don't want to hear. It's effing nuts. And everyone is saying how insane it is, and that he's a bit of a goofball, but overall just excitable and sweet. I guess my question is, how do I even handle this? Like, what do I ask for reasonably? And what is my rage and anger speaking? I'm so upset, but I can't talk to anyone else about it, because my family and friends would just want me to go scorched earth. Consensus. This is battery and above HR's pay grade. It also might have been racially motivated. Comments by OP. I'm black on both parents' sides and part indigenous on my mother's side. I didn't want to mention it in the post because I didn't want to run on the assumption this was racist, mostly because, what if it is? This is a whole other beast, and I hate confrontation. I work a lot at it, but TBH, I'm part Native American, so my hair is so specific. I've almost always had long hair and would donate it when I was younger, but now, I just like it long because it is pretty unique to me amongst most other black women I know. It's just a little thing that makes me feel unique or special. Update. I'm at a pub near HQ enjoying a beer because I am off for the rest of the day in Cannes. I went into the HR meeting, and it went like this. I took a lot of advice from your comments and also broke down and explained it to my mom, best friends, and of course my partner. All were livid, but I got good advice from them as well. So how about that Crown Act? Also in my state, this is a huge deal both locally and federally. So I had further confirmation I wasn't overreacting and being rattled and pissed. I preemptively sent a formal email to HR asking for the records, as this is a police matter, and requesting their cooperation. That got attention, as now, instead of just meeting with a rep from HR, the meeting changed by the time I logged on this morning to have new names added to the calendar invite. I sat down with Anne, who is my direct supervisor, Gary, the HR lead, and Leon, who is the supervisor of the offender. First was a long apology. Very HR. This should never have happened. We take these matters very seriously, etc. Then they talked about what they've already done. He is currently suspended and written up, and if he returns, he will need to do mandatory training. This has all been documented with witness statements that will be shared with me. I am given the option to work now directly with Leon on matters that branch from my department into his. They reminded me that my job offers free therapy through an online program. But I am already in regular therapy, so they've offered to cover this month via a reimbursement. I am given paid leave through to January 6th, effective as soon as I walk out from the meeting. I will still be paid for my time on the party and the bonuses promised to me for working on it. But I will no longer be required to assist with prep going forward. Then they gave me the floor, asking what, if anything, more I wanted done. How was I? I started with thanking them for their attention on this matter. I mentioned that while I do want to believe the best in people, it bears noting that this can be viewed as assault and possibly racially driven. I explained that ethnic hair takes a lot to maintain, and as a black woman, I do a lot to ensure its health and length. I reiterated his repeated comments about my hair, and how I felt this might have been targeted, and I do not ever want to be around this man again. I will be filing a police report on the matter due to the seriousness of him, not only touching me without permission, but also using a dangerous object to cut my hair. I then said that I've sent images to my hair stylist and expect to be reimbursed for the services of managing my altered hair. They asked how much that might be, and I said I wasn't sure, as I have an emergency appointment this Saturday. Anne spoke up and said that might not be possible, but gave it to Gary in the form of a question. Gary said he needs to see about it. But Leon spoke up and said that he, as a black man, would be shocked if they didn't cover this and reinforced my point that black hair care is expensive and time-consuming. He spoke of the culture of the company and how we are supposed to not only be against discrimination, but also claim to be anti-racist. It wouldn't be right to not make right this offense because Lily is being so calm right now, and I'm impressed because that's some next-level racism from where I sit. I did confirm that I am shaken and very, very angry, but also a professional, and I want this meeting to be productive. Ultimately, Gary gave me a tentative yes, and I requested an email confirming all the points and promises made in this meeting. I received that about an hour ago with confirmation that I need only to send an invoice or receipt to Gary. In the meeting, I was told that an email has been sent directly to HR but addressed to me from the man who cut my hair. They said I don't have to read it, but they will send it to me if I want. I did, at least for the sake of having a confirmation and confession possibly in the email. All in all, I think things went okay under the circumstances. I did show them the damage to my hair, and Leon was visibly pissed. I honestly think the guy will eventually just be sacked if not for this, for literally any other reason, just based on his boss's behavior towards this. Last night, I cried about my hair. At the time, I was feeling like I was being a crybaby. It's just hair at the end of it. But it occurred to me also that it's a big part of me and my identity, and it gives me a tie also to my indigenous roots. I did say that in the meeting too, but it's just heartbreaking to me. Nothing is undone. My stylist said, based on the photos, I will need to at least trim a bit off the bottom. A commenter suggested a smile shape, so I suggested it to my stylist, so we'll see. My mum, who is easily the best mum in the world, sent me a text right before my meeting ended to ask how it went, and I told her everything I told you all. She said she was proud of me for standing up for myself, and gave me a push to alert the police. So I will. She wants me to sue also, but so far is only lightly suggesting it. It just sounds stressful, and this was already traumatic, so I think I will worry about that after the holidays. Now though I have a lot of time to burn. I'm not used to having no work. I used to work multiple jobs and have side hustles and all that. But after I got this job, which has great pay and benefits, I now make enough to live comfortably without fear of being short on rent or skimping on the food budget to make ends meet. That's why I put my all into it. I've been commended multiple times already there, and if I do say so myself, I'm a great employee. It was nice to have that a little reflected back, but I have to admit, I'm still angry. I also feel some sort of way about Anne in the meeting. She was nice to me and handed me a tissue when I teared up, but otherwise looked so uncomfortable to the point that it was pretty distracting. She looked like she was being tortured, and I was like, girl, no one is having fun here, get it together. But I am in my feelings, and I know that. So now I guess I need to figure out how to fill my time for a while. Trip, decorating, new hobby, old hobby. Thoughts? I could use suggestions. Lastly, it occurs to me a lot of folks in the comments have been following my insane life. So I wanted to thank everyone for the DMs with uplifting words, jokes, hair care suggestions, and the like. It really makes this SHTTY situation easier. So from my heart to yours, I wish you all such a lovely holiday. I know they can be hard for a lot of people. I hope you can all find a little joy regardless. Edit. I wanted to quickly update now that the day is over. I spent most of my day doing things that bring me joy. I randomly went to the museum, had an espresso martini, etc. But first, I finished moping at the bar I was at and reported it to the police. It was stressful, but I wanted it out of the way. As my lawyer strongly suggested, I do so now in the event that I sue later. I did check my email and read his email to me that was funneled through HR. There's a very clear admission of what happened. He had very odd reasoning and repeated intrusive thoughts, and did note he is on the spectrum. He also mentioned lightly that remote work saved him because he's awkward, and he just wants to be friendly, but admits he took things too far. Comments by OP. I'm very grateful for him speaking up. I honestly was a little wary of him at first because he used to love that guy. They hung out outside work, though I don't know if they're very close or just work buddies. I'm glad also he spoke from the experiences in place of being a black person, knowing the cultural and practical ins and outs to help me through talking through it. He really came through. I owe that guy a gift basket or something. Is that what people do? Give gift baskets? Lol, I don't know. Maybe just some wine or something. OMG, Leon is a real one. I owe him. He had my back. The more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm like, I have to get him something for the holidays just to appreciate him. But I don't want it to look singled out, so I'm thinking some bulk gifts from everyone. But his bag has a little something special. Also, hell no, I won't be signing anything. I made it abundantly clear I'm making a report. And Leon definitely made it clear it would be on blast if they didn't honor this, not in those words. He was way smoother than I. Also, I talked to my stylist, and she actually specializes in crazy special cases. So she's totally going to send the invoice in a template she uses for her work in film and theater and such. It's upsetting. And when I told a close friend of mine who is on the spectrum, the moment I said he mentioned he is too, she was like, oh hell no, which helped me a lot. Also, Leon is awesome, and I remembered that he really likes Star Wars, so I am actually going to crochet a Death Star for him, and then give everyone a small gift bag and add to his my Death Star and a note thanking him. He really was the MVP, and he also sent me a text asking if I was okay and seeing if I needed anything. He mentioned his partner has a great stylist, etc. Sweetheart. It's nice to have the reminder that there are good people, especially when learning or experiencing that there are also crappy people. I was pretty let down. Anne is white, I think, but has an adopted kid who is black, so I was confused. We bonded because when I first joined, she said she was fairly new there too. She'd been there for like 4 months before I came along, and then randomly asked me about black hair, because she has no clue and her daughter's hair is a mystery to her. I gave her links to my stylist's YouTube, which has tutorials and such, and my stylist's info. So I was like, girl, where are you? It's so frustrating. She is normally quite vocal, and is a huge anti-racism poster on her socials. Her wife is POC too, just not black. Ugh. I still am pretty upset about that. I feel like I shouldn't have had to advocate for myself in that instance that much. And Leon shouldn't have had to back me up the way he did. Glad he did though. I actually have a lawyer due to past issues, so I CC'd her on the emails. I think she's on vacation right now, but she did send me a short text confirming she's following along. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.